Hello, welcome to Hired. I'm Travis Miller, and with me today I have good friend Michael Neece. Michael is the head of Gilead Sciences, Gilead Programming Academy, and author of the upcoming book In Kind, which is truly his specialty, kindness, building and growing and creating an inclusive work culture, all centered around the idea of kindness, which shocking how few of us actually think about that. But Michael, I wanted to start off going backwards a little bit because I'm super curious. You started off as a high school science teacher, and now you're director of statistical programming for one of the largest biopharma companies in the world. How in the hell did that happen?
Hey, Travis. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show, and it's good to see you again. Um, yeah, the transition from being a high school science teacher through all the other different professions that I've been in to being a statistical programmer, yeah, it was shocking for me as well. I just have to say, I think you don't necessarily know what your career path is going to be when you start out. So you just if you're really good out there, kids, and you just try to polish all your skill sets and try to gain all the knowledge you can and network like crazy, you never know where you're going to end up.
Well, we've all got those stories. I mean, myself, I have a degree in broadcast journalism and worked for WGN Radio starting out my career out of college. And it's amazing the paths that your life can take if you're just willing to see side roads and take the occasional detour.
Well, and if you're also just fascinated by the people that you potentially could be working with and the problems you could be working on, I mean, then it's really just limited to what kind of, kindness practice you have and what kind of curiosity you have embedded inside of you.
So where's the overlap for you? I mean, statistical programming at a biopharma company and author of a book about kindness in the workplace. Where was the genesis of that?
Gosh, I think it's because I have stumbled in enough different industries and enough different jobs over the years that it occurred to me we just need a lot more kindness. I mean, you could also point to more recent events, like the pandemic. During the pandemic, I found that while I was a computer programmer and I was used to working from home, I had been doing that for a few years. Suddenly I had three teenagers in the house who were also home with me, and the struggle was real. The struggle was real for everyone. And, I think Americans have never felt more disconnected and more distanced from each other. And so it's just the genesis of the idea of, why am I not writing a book about kindness in the workplace? Because it's something that I value so highly. It's something that I've been researching for so long. Why not do it? So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge with even with our team, uh, still so much of them being hybrid, remote, work from anywhere. Having the intention, because it feels like a lot of our interactions are scheduled with agendas, a focused topic, and there's less opportunity for spontaneous kindness, for a almost meaningless relationship building. Just the random acts of camaraderie. How have you shaped that with your team or encouraged others to do that in this shifting landscape?
right. Well, Travis, what you call, these random moments, I mean, isn't that life? I mean, that's everything, right? I mean, as much as you go to work and maybe you commute and you're in your car and you're listening to your radio or a podcast or something like that, um, it's the moments that happen in between that I think a lot of us kind of reflect back on and kind of remember. So, yeah, when I was leading a fully remote team, One of the things I would do is have just a scheduled lunch, and it would be over Zoom, and it would be, obviously sitting in your own house. And, why? I mean, you could just sit there in your own comfort, and you could just chow down whenever you wanted to, and you wouldn't have to have people watching you chew and those kinds of, embarrassing things. But it just seemed like we needed it. It seemed like we needed to have those moments where we could talk about our gardens and, hey, my anniversary is coming up, and things that aren't, part of the everyday work life, because it's those moments that humanize us. And I believe truly that, all humans, we're all storytellers, right? And so it's hard to tell those stories and hear those stories if everything is always, down to the last few minutes in an agenda, point by point.
Mm-hmm. It's something we've started to do, and we've gotten some pretty good feedback, especially for new people that come on board. It's been so challenging for new people to become a part of the community, to feel the culture, because they never see most of the people, or maybe they see them as one of 30 faces on a all hands meeting. And so when new people come on board, we've started to put on their calendar random coffee breaks throughout their first month with every single person that works here, so that they have, and there's no agenda, but it's 15 to 30 minutes just to talk one-on-one and hear some stories and get to know each other just a little bit better. We've gotten great feedback on that. But we haven't really gone above and beyond that one session per person. Do you think there's an advantage to doing something like that on a regular basis, or do you just have to leave it to people to do it on their own? Because I've always found that when people have the idea to do something on their own, it's so much more valuable than being told to do that exact same thing.
Sure. But at the same time, if something isn't on your calendar, it doesn't exist. I mean, especially during a work day, right? I mean, you are driven to, check things off of your checklist. And so if you don't see that next meeting that's coming up that says coffee break, with Travis, then you forget about it. And before you know it, 3 months have gone by. You don't really know what's going on in each other's lives. So I think we do have to make that time with each other. One of the fun things that we'd always do, in my current team and in my, previous teams, is we would do gratitudes. We would open up every single meeting, because there are only 15 of us in my largest team that I've had in any recent times. And, a minute per person. It's okay to burn up 15 minutes of a meeting hearing about the things that bring joy to everybody else in the team, because then it reminds you, oh, right, I was having a bad day, but I just heard 14 really good reasons why I should be happy about the world. And it's not always just the weather. It's not always just I had this nice sandwich. It's all the rest. It's all the other things. Like, I am really grateful for public transport. I'm really grateful that bus driver saw me waving and held the door for an extra minute and let me get in. So, those, I think those minutes are also the ones that we all kind of live for, right? I mean, it's easy to get stuck in the drudgery of doing the day to day. But the more you know your friends, the more you know these colleagues that you're working with, the more excited you are to do the work together, the more you feel like you're aligned.
That was something I wanted to ask you about, because it's something that I struggle with is, I really believe in your philosophy of creating a tremendous work environment through kindness. But on the days when I don't want to, when I'm not feeling it, I have to dig deep to remember to do it in the simplest of moments. How do you keep that spirit alive when you're having a difficult time seeing it in yourself?
Right. Well, I think we ask a lot of ourselves. I mean, I think we should just believe in the idea that occasionally we're going to have those moments where we're not feeling terribly kind, and where it's hard to pour out that kindness and give ourselves a little bit of self-care and a little bit of space and a little bit of understanding. That being said, I think that you can increase your odds of being really kind just all the time if you do a few simple things. And among those simple things, like if kindness is the superpower that you can always bring to bear, you can bring it to bear much better if you've just had a spa day, right? Or if you've just bought yourself that really magnificent lunch that you've wanted for an entire week, right? And that's just to demonstrate that if you take the time to do self-care, you're feeling much better about other people. So my advice is always make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure that you're hydrated, make sure you're taking your meds if you have them, make sure, I mean, it sounds really basic and really simple, but oh my gosh, I mean, I have a really big blind spot. I just went and met with my creative team for the book up in New York for a few days, and they pointed out that I have this blind spot. One of them said, "You're writing this book, you have a day job, you have 3 kids and a wife, and you have construction going on at your house. You have all of these things going on. And didn't you just collapse and have to be taken to the hospital because you weren't taking care of yourself?" I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I guess you have a point. So I think self-care is the one thing that really helps reprime that superpower of kindness. And so I definitely absolutely recommend that. Just make sure to take care of all the, the P's and Q's of your daily life.
But you sounds like you really struggle with that. How'd you end up in the hospital, and you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing great. This was about a month ago. Yeah, we're all driven by different things, and I hate the idea of just sitting idle. And I believe in the idea of self-care for other people. Being a good practitioner of it myself, that's a little bit different, right, Travis? I mean, you get in the middle of a workday and you suddenly look up and realize it's 3:00 and you haven't had lunch, right? I mean, this happens to all of us. And so I always recommend, put reminders on your calendar, have a reminder for lunch, block out the hour. I mean, you may not use the hour, but good Lord, you should. I mean, you should get outside and you should look at birds chirping. You should listen for dogs barking. You should go and see the beautiful grass and just try to enjoy your life a little bit, even if your sandwich only took 5 minutes to eat, right?
You can find those moments. I did something the other day that I've never done before. We had somebody come in for an interview, and it was the first nice day in a month. Like, I don't want to sit in the conference room right now. There's no reason that we can't do this outside. And we went for a 30-minute walk down by the river walk right near our office. 30-minute walk down by the river. Went and got a cup of coffee, just kept walking. It was tremendous. I've never done it before, but if the day is nice, I'm definitely doing it again, just to get those moments. And I think it did a really good job of lowering the barriers. I mean, we had some deeper conversations than traditionally had in a regular interview.
Well, I mean, you're not in a sterile environment. You're not in a very controlled space that you know intimately well and the interviewee doesn't know. And so you're out in that familiar, you're nature bathing, and that is very therapeutic. So I applaud you for doing that. I mean, that's a really creative way of bringing in somebody who is contemplating, do I want to work with these people? And I mean, hopefully the answer is a resounding yes at this point, right?
So is there anything else that you do on your teams to hire for this quality? Because I'd imagine that kindness is so important to you and to your culture that it's something you focus on, hiring people who have kindness in them. What are you doing to search that out?
I listen for really authentic answers. I ask a few questions that may be just a little bit offbeat. But if I get the impression that we are aligned in terms of what is the mission of the company that we're working for? What is your mission? What drives you? What makes you excited about life? I've trained a lot of computer programmers over the years in the pharmaceutical industry, and some are just driven by, the logic, just like, oh, it's so much fun to get in and do the programming. but why not go work for Amazon or Google or someplace else? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
seriously. I mean, if you want to come and work at my pharmaceutical company, then I need to hear somewhere during the conversation that you care deeply about patients, that you care deeply about somebody in your family who's been suffering from a chronic ailment. I need to hear that you care about your community and how you've seen it ravaged by, OxyContin. I mean, I need to hear those kinds of things, because then I know you're not going to just show up for a paycheck or show up for the really cool programming. You're going to show up because you deeply care about the patients that we're trying to serve, day in and day out. And so it's a whole different kind of alignment, a whole different kind of dedication.
I love that idea of digging into the story of the why, because it's so easy in our business, especially. I don't think I've ever had an interview where someone didn't say, well, I'm really interested in this position because I really care about helping people. Okay, tell me how.
Yeah.
Tell me why. Tell me how. Because at this point, it's just something someone has to say in just about any interview. So show me how. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's and trying to pry open that lid and get, I mean, there's a certain amount of trust you have to try to gain while you're first talking to that person. And then once you've got the trust in place, you can each hear the other's authentic answers. And until you have that trust in place, it's, please see my CV. Please look at my cover letter. Please understand, I have these skills, and I want you to focus on that. I don't want you to focus on the other things. When somebody comes in for an interview and they sit with me, I try to make sure that, if we're in a common space, I want to be sitting where there's no table. I want to be sitting where we are side by side, or where we can look at each other and we're unobstructed. It feels a little too formal, and it feels like we're not really aligned right from the beginning. Whereas if you have that psychology of, we're sitting on the same side, we're heading the same direction, like on your walk going outside, that can be really, really powerful. And then suddenly the other person really opens up. And I think that makes all the difference. Is once you've gained the other person's trust, you're both trying to solve the same identical problem. Right? They're looking to fill a position. You're looking to fill a position, but you don't want to just fill it. You want that person to be somebody you want to work with for years, and you don't want to trap somebody who thinks that it's something that it's not. Right. So it does neither one of you any favors to misrepresent anything. So the sooner you can cut to the quick and get into the what drives you, what's your why, the faster you can, get on track to hire that person or redirect them.
What are you doing to gain that trust in such a short amount of time?
I try to tell them what's really going on with me, the concerns that I have about the company. I try to answer every question just very honestly, and I think that comes across. I think that they can tell I'm not just, doing some sort of corporate line that was memorized that I had to shill to them. I think they appreciate when they hear, well, I've got this going on at home, and I've got, these concerns about the current work. These are the things that drive me because it's exciting. These are the things that kind of worry me from day to day, and I'm not really sure how to handle it, which is why we're trying to fill this position and have somebody who comes in with this expertise, right? So I think it's sharing a little bit of the fear, sharing a little bit of the joy, and then letting them see that and then measure that for themselves. And before you know it, hopefully you've gotten a really good conversation that's rolling.
Is this kindness philosophy, is this something that you're vocal about sharing with new people, with your team? Is this almost a directive, or is this something that you just model and hope that they're going to model after you?
I think my current team and my former team are probably sick to death of hearing about it because it's something I'm so passionate about. I guess my philosophy is very simple. we want to build the future we want to live in, right? For me, that future hopefully looks a lot like Star Trek. I just think that the idea of us all having an optimistic future, a chance to explore, new things together and be curious together, that gets me very excited. And so I try to share whatever seems like, is the right thing for the right person. But the basic philosophy is I will always start with kindness. I will always reattempt with kindness, and I will always close with kindness. And because that's the future I want to live in. I want to live in a place where somebody's going to let me in traffic because they understand that maybe I'm having a hard day and maybe I need to get to the hospital very quickly to say farewell to a loved one. And I mean, so when you think in those terms, when you visualize that future, I think you can build that future.
I've heard that strategy before, and I always try and remember to put it in place. But in the moment, it's one of the most difficult things to do, that when a stranger who you're not interacting with does something that really pisses you off, to make up a story about that justifies what they're doing. And it doesn't, you're not trying to necessarily justify their actions and say that's okay, but it might be. There might be a reason behind it. And if you can build that empathy muscle, then it makes it that much easier to do the next time and the next time and the next time.
Well, and yeah, I was recently asked the question, is it easier to be kind or to be cruel? And I think the very sensible response is it's whichever you've been practicing the most. If you've built the habit around trying to be kind and trying to think in terms of kindness, before you know it, that's really where your heart goes more and more often. It's not perfect. I do get in traffic. I do get frustrated, especially if it's the end of the day and I'm, 45 minutes into an hour-long commute. that can be very frustrating. But I think the more we train ourselves, the better off we are. So, starting like every day, I start off by writing down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And it can't be anything that I've talked about to myself in the last 20 or 30 days. It has to be something new. So it could be that, nice eggs and salsa breakfast that I made for myself. It could be that I got a hug from one of my teenagers that doesn't normally give me the hug that day. Right. So having those gratitudes for something that happened in the last 24 hours, if you do that every single day, you are training yourself to see the positive in the world. It's like a background app that is always running. And so that's just one of the ways that I try to train myself to always try to reach for the kindness anytime that I can. The other thing is that I try to invest in reading and engaging in stories about people that are not like me. Right. I'm living a pretty privileged life. I was raised in a middle income family by 2 PhD scientists. I was given all kinds of, music lessons and opportunities and whatnot. And so I try to read stories about, a little girl who was raised on the wrong side of the railroad tracks and try to understand that not everybody thinks the same way that I think. Not everybody has the same perspective. Not everybody's carrying the same baggage with them to every interaction. And boy, the whole world opens up the more often you're doing that, because then you remember, that person who just cut me off in traffic. I mean, I saw the expression on their face. They look really unhappy. I'm going to let them be happy. I'm going to do the best I can to help them out right now. Because they're clearly in a hurry to get someplace. And if I end up 2 or 3 car lengths later where I'm trying to arrive, who cares, right? I mean, 2 or 3 car lengths, that's not that big a deal.
Gratitude journal. 3 things every day can't be something that you've been grateful for in the last 30 days. 90 things a month that you are grateful for.
Yes.
God, I think that would be so hard for me starting out. So hard for me. But I'd imagine it, like you're saying, it gets easier with practice. Does it get easier?
It gets easier with practice. when it comes to Thanksgiving and it comes to Christmas, I always try to time myself for 2 minutes and write down every single thing I can think of that I'm grateful for. And it just covers pages and pages now, right? When you're first starting off, you're kind of like, I'm grateful for water. I'm grateful for the weather. No, I did that yesterday. I'm grateful for my dog, but before you realize it, like I have a favorite shirt that I really love to wear. And like it just recently got washed and I got to wear it. I mean, that it sounds really tiny, but think about the people who have like 2 shirts or 3 shirts total and they're homeless. Oh my gosh, how lucky am I? Right. Yeah, it's one of those practices that when you get it, when you flex that muscle, you build that muscle. And I feel like mine's pretty strong at this point.
So did something happen to you like when you were younger? Because to really live this philosophy, I mean, everybody knows the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated, and everybody, despite their actions, knows that being kind is good. But to live this philosophy so vocally, to have the desire to write a book, it almost feels like there had to be something in your life to make you understand how important this is.
Yeah, Travis, I think you're right. I think it's a combination of something that happened to me when I was younger and then something that happened to me very early in my professional life. The thing that happened to me when I was younger was, I was raised in a very privileged situation. And my parents believed in hard work. They believed in good grades and all of that. And this is something I do share in the book. They would always lean on my sister, who was 3 years older than I am. And they would always really tear into her if she wasn't getting just the highest of high grades. And then they would turn to me and they would say, you got a couple of B's this time. Work a little harder. And then they would leave me alone. And most people in this situation would probably interpret this as the youngest is getting away with everything. And emotions are not logical. Emotions do not understand logic, because what I took away from that situation was very simply, they don't care about me as much.
Wow.
They don't love me as much as my sister. They're investing all of this time and all of this wisdom and they're lecturing her about it. And it's a big deal. But when it comes to me, they don't care about me that much. They say, well, that's fine. And so somehow in my head, while I know my parents love me, I also got it in my head that nobody cares about me. And that narrative somehow just kept building and building. I remember in the 4th grade, they were calling out, we're doing group pictures for the yearbook or whatever. And I wasn't sure if I'd heard the right thing. And I poked my head out the door and I noticed that my group was having their photo taken at the end of the hallway. And the thought that popped up, that bubbled up in my head was, maybe they're happy I'm not there. Maybe they dropped me from the group and they're actually happy that I'm not there. Oh my gosh, so we all have different limiting beliefs that we carry with us. And so, as I got older, as I, matured, as I, entered the working world, what I found out was that this belief that nobody cares about me was driving me to support everybody around me. I want everybody to know that you are cared about, that you are supported. Do you have everything you need? Do you need me to top off your drink? I mean, I'm that guy because of this limiting belief. So while it cuts one way and it can be kind of hurtful, it's difficult for people to make me believe them when they say they care about me. But the really big side of it is that I can care about others. And so that was one big piece of just who I am. Suddenly, I'm in the working world, right? I've just finished my college degree, and I've been told by the person who's hired me, you have great experience in your outside work, while you were in college. And so I think you're the perfect person to take over this entire division. and make it successful. And so I, rose to the challenge. It sounded really exciting. And then suddenly all of the other employees started coming to me one by one and saying, have you heard about the boss? Boss is pretty mean. Have you heard about the boss? He's doing all these really bad things. He doesn't know what he's doing. You probably know more about things than he does. And so I'd been taught the golden rule, and I knew that I should be supportive and I should be, towing the line of like, I just got this really cool job and it was offered to me by this person that everybody's now ragging on. But before you knew it, about 2 months in, I'd seen enough of the behaviors. I'd really started to believe, oh my gosh, this person really doesn't know what's going on. And they're kind of casually cruel to a lot of people. And so I started being one of the whispering contingent that was talking bad about the boss, showing people, well, he doesn't seem to know what he's doing when it comes to the budget. Here's the budget. Look at it at the comfort of my own desk, thinking he had no idea. Mm-hmm. Well, suddenly I'm sitting across the desk from him and he is chewing me out and bringing up a couple of the things that I've said in the last couple of days. And it was at that moment that I suddenly realized I have taken a wrong turn. I have absolutely abandoned that golden rule, my belief and my value system, and trying to support and care for other people. How do I fix this? How do I, so after finding a new job and leaving that bad atmosphere, I became this student of human nature. What motivates people? How do you motivate a team? How do you understand what's going on in another person's world? And how do you always try to find the best option, the best outcome for every situation? And just over time, it kept clicking and it kept clicking. The people who are kind, even in situations that are unkind to them, mm-hmm. they are the ones who are more successful. They are the ones who are able to affect big, big change and build that kind of world that I want to live in. And so it's a very long-winded answer, and I apologize for that. But I think it's that limiting belief that I came up with when I was a kid, and then breaking my own belief system, and then having to rebuild it from scratch. I think that's what generated all this in me.
So much of what you're saying, it almost sounds more like empathy than kindness, and kindness is a byproduct of it. But you're talking about seeing the world through others' eyes and understanding trying to understand what they're going through, even though it might be impossible to understand, but it's the act of trying. And from that effort comes the kindness, because it's almost impossible to not be kind to someone if you're understanding what they're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think the two are very, very intertwined. There's this great story. It was right about the time of the falling of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union collapse and whatnot. And it's about these villagers who stood in front of a tank. Mm-hmm. And this incredibly young soldier who popped his head out of the tank and said, "You have to get out of the way. You have to get out of the way. I have to move this tank to the square." And they said, "You don't want to be that person. You want to be the bigger person than what you are right now. This is not an okay action. Do not do this." They intuited so much. They were able to figure out so much. And he was able to listen and able to respond to that situation. So I think you're absolutely right. An awful lot of the interactions, social interaction is a full contact sport, right? I mean, it's one of those things where we really have to get all the way engaged. And the more we get secretive or worried or, reclusive or trying to hide who we are, right? Especially during the pandemic, especially while we were sitting in our homes and feeling very separated, it was really easy to do that. I think we all did that to some extent. But the more you hold back who you really are, the less you're serving the people who are trying to interact with you, because they don't know how to interact with you, mm-hmm. and vice versa. So I think we need to tease out of each other as much as we can about what is your truth? What are you living right now? And I think the more we do that, man, the better off we all are. I mean, don't you want to live in a workplace where people genuinely care about you? I think we all do.
So what are you living right now? You're probably neck deep in your book that's coming out soon. Tell me a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so the book is hopefully going to come out in January. This is the place where I'm going to reveal that to everyone. Went up and met with my creative team in New York, and we set out all the milestones. And so, yeah, it's very exciting. The book is called In Kind, Creating Authentic Work Culture with Kindness as Your Guide. And that's exactly what it is. It is a chance for somebody who is starting out, somebody who's starting over, or somebody who just wants to infuse more kindness into their current workspace. It gives all the tips and tricks and strategies. It definitely reveals all these very shame-filled, very difficult moments when I got it wrong, with the hope that the reader can read that and know, oh, this is how I avoid that pitfall. I don't have to go through the pain that Michael went through. So that's what the book is all about. It's kindness is your superpower that you can bring to bear in almost any situation, and it's for the collective good. It's something that once you've learned how to do it and strategized how to do it better, and you've flexed those muscles and practiced, just by how you're choosing to live, you're inspiring everybody around you. And before you know it, a lot of people in the same workplace are going to be doing a lot of the same sorts of things and asking you for advice. How did you handle this hard situation? So that's my hope for the book. When it comes out, definitely it'll come out, in audio format. So I'm excited about that part because having a chance to actually read my own book, I'm looking forward to that piece of it as well.
Can you leave us with one little piece, strategy, tactic, tip to tide us over till January for somebody that does want to start to enact this?
Absolutely. I'll give you a very easy one, but one that I think we all overlook. Really make your contacts list robust. Really pay attention to the people that you come into contact with. Learn their names, learn about their families, learn about their cats and their dogs and their children and their hopes and their dreams. Learn about them, and then don't just try to retain it all in here. You can't do it. Nobody can do it. In 10 years, you won't remember the conversation that you had. Mm-hmm. So keep those notes. Actually sit down and write those into your contacts list so that you can check back in on that person. And it can feel a little bit deliberate, a little bit contrived, until you realize how powerful it is and how much you must really care if you're doing this in the first place. So I would say just make your contacts list very robust, and keep really good notes.
Like there was wasn't there an episode of The Office where Michael got the sale because he had note cards on like the hiring authorities, child's struggle, and
it's like for all his faults, he do all these things.
Yeah. And Dwight tried to get it, and he didn't know anything, and it totally bombed in typical Office fashion. But it's amazing the lessons you can learn from things like that. Michael, that is great advice. I've never done that. I'm gonna enact that. So
yeah, well, it's interesting the people that you find out have been doing this. Bill Clinton built his entire political career on the fact that he had note cards, and he reviewed them. He went over them and tried to remember who these people were because he really legitimately cared, but also he understood that it was powerful.
I definitely have to do that. I have a terrible memory for these things, and I'm always so proud of myself when I do remember, and I can tell that it means something to the person. And deliberate or not, maybe, but it's important for me to remember these things, and it's a shortcoming of mine that I have a difficult time doing it. So this is something that could really help. So appreciate it. Michael, if people want to reach out to you or have any questions for you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I am on LinkedIn probably all day, every day, just trying to learn some wisdom and occasionally posting there as well. So look for me. The spelling of my last name is weird. It is Nece. It's kind of like the opposite of nephew, but spelled in just a very funny way. But yeah, look for Michael G. Neece. Also, michaelgneece.com. You can also find me there.
Well, Michael, this has been a pleasure. We will look forward to the book. Maybe we'll have you back on after I get a chance to read it, and we can discuss it even further. But excited for the future and really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Travis. It was a really good conversation, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Michael, thank you. Big thank you to Noah Cuff, our producer. This has been Hired. Talk to you all soon.